We talk about Egypt quite a bit here on Destiny, but we don't get into the esoteric enough. Of course, on Earth Ancients, we talk about the monuments, the discoveries, the scanning technology that's revealing a great deal more about these ancient Ephesus than we have ever known. But today we are introducing a new book called Sacred Mysticism of Egypt, the Ancient Path of Heka Initiation. And the author is Fatoula Adrimi, who is an intuitive. She's a psychic. And what makes this fun is that she, at a certain age, began getting impressions of this early period of Egypt known as Zep Tepi. And Zep Tepi, up until very recently, was thought to be a myth, a very early period where the pharaohs referred to as the beginning of Egypt. But as it turns out, we're going to learn a lot more than the myth as it is, because Fatoula actually has had past lives there and recalls them to such a level that we really get a sense of them. So, Fatoula, welcome to Destiny. Great to have you on the program.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Cliff, for inviting me. And thank you to everybody listening. I have such a passion for ancient Egypt, and it's really where my spiritual home is. And I dream of that time. I feel it calling me, this time of Zep Tepi, where we were so connected to ourselves, to the earth, to the cosmos, to the universe, to the divine. And there is a yearning in my soul for that time. So maybe sometimes people feel there is a place where we can call home, and that was home for me.
Let's talk about your childhood, Fatoula, your Greek ancestry. You write in your book in the very beginning that you were sensitive, you're psychic, and your dad even says you speak to more dead people than you do people that are alive. What was that like growing up in Greece? Were you with a Greek Orthodox family, religious family, or was it more just simple lifestyle?
So it was not easy. It was not easy. Well, my family, they're not Orthodox really. That they are, of course, everybody in Greece is this the culture. We're Greek Orthodox people, but they weren't churchgoers or anything like that. And my dad is an engineer. He's a very scientific person, so he doesn't believe in anything. The only thing he believes is in Greek shamanism, and he says that's real to him because his grandfather was, what we call in the West a shaman. They don't have that word in Greece, but he was practicing shamanism in his time, and he tried to teach my dad. My dad said that he was not interested as a child because he wanted to play, but because it was a hereditary vocation, he had to sit with his grandfather over hours and hours doing the ritual with herbs and with everything else.
So let me
So he,
just stop you real quickly. So your grandfather was a shaman,
great
and
grandfather.
yeah, and so was he affiliated with a tribe, with a group, or was he just indoctrinated as a young person and perhaps he's a psychic as well, but he was obviously a huge influence on you, but where did his roots begin?
So Greek shamanism is very secret and is passed through the family.
Oh,
So it's not a group. It's like really close from one person to another. And in my family, it was passed down through the male line. That's how my father was the first male born in his family. So his grandfather told him, "You have to do it because it's the first male born child that needs to carry the tradition." So
okay.
it's not, people know, well, at my great grandfather's age, in the 60s and 70s, well, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, people would go to him for all sorts of things, ailments, curse removal, blessings, tell us what the weather is going to be like for the year. He used to do
Mhm.
all of that kind of thing. But so there was that understanding in my family, but my parents were not really religious. And I was very connected. I was actually really drawn to to not religion, but to the church, to the divine, to all these beings we call Mother Mary and Jesus. I could feel all the angels. I was so open. And my parents, I think, were a bit frightened of that child who could speak about all these things. So I decided not to say anything. It was better for me not to say anything, because the idea was, if you said, I speak to Mother Mary, they think either there's something wrong with you, you're crazy, or this is devil's work. Even if it's
Yeah.
Mother Mary, only the priest can speak to these beings. So you are connecting to something you should stay away from. So there was this huge fear. This huge fear in the community of anybody connecting or seeing things. It was like branded devil's work. Don't do that.
Uh-oh.
So I kept it to myself, and as long as I kept it to myself, I had a wonderful experiences. This was a real joy for me.
But your
And
grandfather must have encouraged you. I mean, if you're seeing and hearing spirits and naturally communicating, if your parents were freaked out, your grandfather was probably saying, "Don't worry about it." I mean, talk about how he would work with you. Obviously, if you're sensitive, you want to know what the heck's going on.
yeah, so the lineage is patriarchal. In Greece is very everything is really patriarchal, and spirituality was no different. So my great grandfather, it was my great grandfather,
Oh,
my father's grandfather. So
okay.
my great grandfather told everybody that it's unlucky for women to do any spiritual work. It's
Oh,
not good for women to have visions. So you can see the control of the patriarchy. So when I started, after years and years doing shamanic work myself, opening to my family, saying, this is what I do, the first thing my father said is that, my grandfather said that it's unlucky for women to do this kind of thing.
hmm.
You should not do it. I'm not going to share anything with you. And so it was quite difficult. So I prayed to the spirits to help me. And after 2 years, he opened up and he shared with me his tradition. But
Ah,
as a child, it was very much like women should not meddle in this. And my grandmother, I didn't know her, so that's my dad's mother. She was very open, very psychic. Wonderful story about her, but we are here to talk about Egypt, so I'm not going to. I have so many things I could share
yeah.
about
Well,
shamanism.
let's talk
Yeah,
about
but
you. You write in your book that you're very clairvoyant. What does
mm.
that mean, and how do you apply it to your life?
So the first thing, that I started seeing was images. So basically, if I have a question, I will see an image that describes the answer that I'm looking for. And sometimes, but it's much more rare, I actually see the spirits with my eyes open. When I was a child, I had no doubt whatsoever of what I was seeing, because whatever I was asking for, the prayers of a child, it
Right.
would happen. I would pray for something to these spirits that were coming into my mind, that they were appearing, and sometimes also in front of me. And they would say, sure, if you want to win the raffle at school, okay, you're coming with an open heart, why
Wow.
not? So things were so easy. I mean, I would really, really ask them something and it would happen. And so I had no doubt, and they were also very protective of me, and they were really guiding me in my life. But they wouldn't, I don't want to give people the impression that they would live my life for me. Of course, you have to go through the halls and come out of the dark halls that life opens for you as well, so you can learn. And sometimes it's the helping spirits that trip you, so you can see, we told you not to do that. This is what happens when you don't consider things properly. But yes, I had this great connection. I could also hear spirit, and I can still do that. They come and talk through me. More what is happening with me more is that I merge with my helping spirits, and they speak through my mouth. And when I do healing work, they would move my hands. They will take things, intrusions from people's bodies. They will take things out. They will bring, so they will use my body. They will kind of merge with me. When I was a child, I was more of an observer of them, and hearing them, feeling them in my body. And sometimes I would have this very deep feeling that this is something here. And as a child, sometimes I didn't understand it all, so I would get a bit frightened somehow when the spiritual energy would come, really in the room. And some of the guides that are considered like family now, like Anubis, it was a bit scary at first,
Let
but
me just ask you, Fatoula, do you have spirit guides? What were you calling these helpers? Are they spirit guides? Are they angels? Do you have a name for them that's comfortable? Because these are beings that appear to be as active in your life as real physical beings.
yes, they are, and they are. I'm very fortunate to have this connection, but I think it's a connection that is inherent in our human self. And in Zep Tepi in ancient Egypt, that was very much there for everybody. I believe in that time there were no shamans in ancient Egypt of this ancient time, because everybody was connected. Everybody was so connected. But for me, these beings, Cliff, are like, how can I describe? I describe them as part of my family, really.
Yeah.
My first book I dedicated to my earthly mother, and also to my divine mother, Goddess Isis. And goddess is not really the word that we should use, because we have a vision of what God or goddess is from our Western culture. But these beings of light, maybe beings of light, enlightened beings, is a better
Okay.
term. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So in your book, you write since 2006, you've been remembering. You've been remembering the Zep Tepi period. What happened in 2006 that shifted you to Egypt? Was there a certain guide that came through, or someone said you're going to start remembering more about this period of time? Talk a little bit about that opening.
Well, Isis came into my life. She really came into my life in a meditation, and she asked me if I wanted to be her teacher again. And I said yes, because who would say no? I was just like, didn't know what I was signing up for. I said yes. And then things just started to happen. There was, in 2006, I went to Egypt, but I also went to Knossos as well, which is in Crete, is the Minoan Crete, which was, people call it a palace, but what I saw was a huge temple complex. So no, not just the palace, just so much more than that. And after that, I received from Isis. She came through and she gave me this first system that is called the 7 gates of awareness. Then she took me to Egypt, and I saw these gates in a temple. It's a little temple of Osiris inside Karnak, a chapel. And she showed me, says, this is the teaching that I'm giving you, that you are channeling. So she started with giving me the initiation process of the mysteries, how I can invite people in the mysteries, how I can merge with her. And through me, she can raise people's vibration so we can start to become more connected. And channeling Heka. Heka is the part of creation that we all had access to in Zep Tepi in ancient Egypt.
Hmm.
Um, and we still have access to.
Okay, so I consider Zep Tepi a period, but I also, because we're not really told by the Egyptological community that's an actual period, I consider Zep Tepi so far back in our history that, or Egypt's history, that it's hard to really fathom that there were actual people there. But talk about Zep Tepi. What do you understand it to be? And also, if you wouldn't mind, I think that you probably have had a number of past lives there as well.
Yes, that's right. So when I started working with ISIS, it was a friend of mine from America who was a mentor for me at the time, Frank Babcock. And I never met him in flesh. He manifested in the room. And then somebody got in touch got me and him in touch. So there were things like that happening, strange things. And he said you should really look into your past lives, because he could see me as this Egyptian person, and that's why he came to me in the room. He said I came to pay my respects, but I was completely, I was really ignorant by then, at that point. So I said, yeah, okay, I will look into it. I will investigate my past lives in Egypt. And as I say in the book Sacred Mysticism of Egypt, the first time I tried to go to Zep Tepi, it was like the question came, why do you want to go to the golden times of ancient Egypt? What is your intention? And my answer, my first answer, which was because Frank said it's a good idea, or I'm curious about it, didn't get me anywhere. I was back in my body. Everything just shut down. I couldn't see anything. And then I thought I really need to dig deep. And my answer was, the second answer was, I want to go to see Zep Tepi because maybe there is something there that I can help people at this time, here now. Maybe I can bring some knowledge or some understanding that can help our world now. And that intention was more altruistic, of course, and that opened the doors. So the next thing is, I am in these megalithic temples, like the temple of the Sphinx, the Valley Temple, the Osirian Temple, these big megalithic structures.
Wow.
And what I see there, I see me doing ceremony there. I'm in a different body, of course. My skin is quite dark. And I feel, that I go into the temple, and I felt this immense heat. Of course, I'm in Glasgow, my body's in Glasgow, and it's very cold and wet here. But there I could really feel the heat. And I could feel the humidity as well, which you don't have now in Egypt, right? Because now in Egypt is a very dry climate. But I could feel humidity. It was just like really almost like difficult to breathe,
Wow.
humid. And then I see that the walls are bare. They don't have any hieroglyphs. They don't have any images, but they have all of that written in energy. So the walls are constructed bare, but the energy, the language, there is a sacred language that is on the walls. And I start to connect with that energy. I start to connect with that language because I see the images. I see how I could, because I was a spirit, of course, I could also go through the walls and go to the next level. I see the underground part of these temples, and I see in the underground that there is so much power because the ceremonies were done underground to really harness that energy coming deep from the earth. And I see that the underground of the temples is as important, if not more important, from what we see at the top, and that there are many levels that we haven't really discovered yet, or we are not allowed to discover yet. But I see, for example, that the pyramids and the temple of the Sphinx are connected underground. That has not been discovered. But in my vision, I could go through a tunnel from the temple of the Sphinx to the pyramid, and it would
Right.
take to a different place where we go now from the main entrance. So
How do you know, Fatoula, that it was the first time, Zep Tepi? Is that language provided by the priest that you're remembering as that person in that time?
no, that was my intention, because I felt that, well, what was the guidance, my own guidance, the inner guidance that I had was that I needed to go back to Zep Tepi, because that was when the energy was so pure. They said,
Okay.
if I'm looking for help for humanity right now, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to remember where you came from, and that was the time.
So
Because
your intention of meditatively going back to the first time, which is you use the language Zep Tepi, led you to this lifetime where you were in Egypt at the very beginning.
yes, yes. it was my intention, but also it was that guidance, that's when it was, the energy was pure. In the pharaonic times, they inherit the wisdom of Zep Tepi. They inherit the pyramid texts, the myths, all this rich tradition, and they practice it as their religion, as the spiritual tradition. In the mysteries, it's much more than a religion, it's a spiritual practice. But what they do, they said, my helping spirit said, at that time there is also the corruption. There's great work being done in the temples, but the whole of the human race has fallen into a lower vibrational state, so the teachings are not as pure. But because they inherited what all this tradition, it is very useful to remember whatever we can remember from ancient Egypt, even later on. And even going now to the temples, I go to temples who were built later on, like Abydos, amazing temple. The Osirian behind it is from Zep Tepi, but the main temple of Seti the First is an
Yeah.
incredible temple. Is so alive, and the energy is continuing. So I feel that somehow Zep Tepi is there in the beginning, is the purest form of the teachings, but then somehow they come, they flow, the energy flows, the journey continues throughout the pharaonic Egypt as well.
So Zep Tepi is considered the period where the gods were alive, Osiris and Horus and those other gods. Did you see them? Were they human beings or were they actual beings of light or ETs? Some people think that the early Zep Tepi period was an ET initiation.
So I didn't see, I'm sorry, I didn't see extraterrestrials, but I saw people being so connected to the stars, so connected to the cosmos, and knowing that, here on the earth, we're an outpost of beings who we came from different places. So we all have come from different places on the earth. And because we are all so different, we have to kind of try and work it out and live together, which is really tough because we are not of the same place, all of us. Earth is has so many different souls of different level of understanding. And in Zep Tepi, though, the people who had come were much more aware. We were still born, we didn't manifest out of thin air. We were still born through this amazing miracle of life, that the earth gave us these bodies, but our bodies was of a great vibration, and we could self-heal ourselves, and our lifespan was much greater.
Hmm.
So people can say, well, I remember, sometimes Zep Tepi, but I can't figure it out because it was so many, can't have lived like one life, can't last for so long. Our current life, no. But in Zep Tepi, we had an incredible ability to self-heal through universal energy that we are now tapping into again through holistic medicine. But there it was just like overflowing. The universal energy was something that was so tangible that we could really feel. There was no question about it being there. And actually we used the universal energy to power our civilization, to construct the pyramids and the temples we see now. We use the universal energy for electricity, for everything. It was part of our experience, making electricity out of thin air. That was the way, because this etheric energy is part of the cosmos, and part of, yeah, flowing to us too.
Can you talk a little bit about what you experienced when you went back to that time period of the pyramids? Because, a lot of people still feel that the pyramids were tombs, but engineers who visit, and we have a lot of these people on our program, believe it was a giant engine of some kind, an energy producing machine. The other thing I'd like you to talk a little bit about is the energy machine generated energy and what was it used for?
Yes, so the pyramids were multi-purpose, and I absolutely agree that the pyramids were built by engineers. I mean, I kind of sometimes think, can't we now see that what is hidden in plain sight? I mean, we can look at the pyramids and say, how can we think that these pyramids were built by unskilled workers or slaves? How can we think that
Yeah.
when we look the work that is done there? We cannot even construct these pyramids now. I mean, nobody has tried, but it's a magnificent miracle of engineering. And these, yeah, they are, of course, they are machines. They are multi-purpose. They bring the universal energy. They convert it. This is like an energy generator that is connecting the whole of their world, not just Egypt, but it goes back to Atlantis and it goes back further. So these pyramids are not just in Egypt. We'll discover, the Bosnian pyramids have been discovered. We might discover other things as well. The standing stones, I think they're connected to the pyramids. And I think what they have created was sacred sites, because they had also say the ritual and ceremony and the evolution of consciousness was also part of this work. But it was also, the practical side of being a machine and the spiritual side of being a sacred site. But they are also connecting etherically the whole of their world. And what happens is they create electricity, they create radio waves, they create communication. They create communication because whatever you can do inside the pyramid is communicated etherically around the earth. Now we don't have we can't really listen and read and feel what is being communicated, what is being transmitted, because it's in the form of energy. But if we could, we would be able to understand that they are actually transmitting through the whole planet and beyond with these structures. So for me, I had an experience in this lifetime about this. It was the day before the spring equinox in 2011, and it was a full moon. And we went into one of the pyramids, not the Great Pyramid, not the pyramids of Giza, so the later ones. It was the Dashur Pyramid, and it has 3 chambers. We end up in the 3rd chamber, which is something that you don't really see, because the 3rd chamber is one where you basically are going through a corridor. It's made of wood, so it's a modern thing, and you sit there, and below you are boulders, big boulders coming out of the earth, and sulfur coming out as well. So there's a bit of a smell there,
Hmm.
but so you have the element of fire. So as we go in with my group, some people are taken over. They can't remember what happened, but we all started chanting. And we were all there chanting. And I just noticed some people started chanting, everybody starts chanting. And then there was a man there meditating. He joins us and he starts chanting with us. And we have this vision that what is happening is that our chanting at that time is being transmitted all over the earth from this space
Hmm.
and the cosmos. And I see the pyramid becoming so active. And we stayed there. We had lost any sense of time. And then the guards came and said, look, we're closing the place. Can you please finish up? And when we came out, they were all in their cars waiting for us to come out, and so they could go home. So yeah.
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so in Zep Tepi, I think the pyramids were incredible places of using the etheric energy to create electricity, to create physical energy, to create communication, and as sacred places of initiation for the evolution of consciousness, because the Great Pyramid is called the place of ascension. That's its name, the place of ascension. So it was about ascending from this physical body into your infinite spirit. And I believe that in the what we call the king's chamber, and the sarcophagus there is the place where all these ley lines meet. All the power comes there from the pyramid, and is where people would lie down to go through their initiation, to raise their vibration, to raise their consciousness. So that's what I have seen.
You know,
And
I haven't even thought about that in the King's Chamber, that one, I guess you could call it built-in sarcophagus because it's attached to the floor, would be directly under all the ley lines which intersect. It must be a super powerful area to lay. You know, I've been in that chamber many, many times, but I haven't had, I felt something very eerie about considering laying inside that that box. But as you say, it's all the temples, all the pyramids that we know about that are Egyptian appear to be built over ley lines. I mean, I've been to the Hathor temple in Dendera. Have you been there?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
something's very special about that place because the rooms, each of the rooms seems to be vibrating at a certain harmonic, and so it's like that place is still turned on. Are the temples still active, do you think?
Yes, I do think so. I do think so. And what has happened with me was that in 2010, actually the year before 2009, my helping spirit Isis came and said, I want you to lead a pilgrimage in Egypt. And she told me exactly where to go, to which temples to go, and what ceremony I should do in each of these temples. Every time I go, it's different, but they are so alive. They meet us. We go there with a pure intention, and the place is vibrating. But sometimes, what happens with the pyramid, I feel that sometimes if you go when there are tourists around, it's like the place is sleeping, because people have gone there and they said, I was so excited I would go to the Great Pyramid, but I didn't feel anything. But if you go there when there are no tourists, and I have had this privilege and a gift, it's really a gift. And I thank the Egyptian people who could do that. So they gave me the special time, the 2 hours
It's
to
called the
go there.
private visit.
The private visit, that's right. Thank you,
Yeah,
Cliff.
we
Private
do that.
visit. Yeah. And you go there, and we go there and we do ceremony. Now, that pyramid is just so alive. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that this place is absolutely buzzing with etheric energy, with energy of light that is helping us all come into ourselves, evolve, elevate our consciousness and our vibration. So
Mhm.
it's a very, very special place. And I love Egypt. I love Zep Tepi. It's my spiritual home. It's not there yet, but they left us their structures so that we can now wake up, go back to that. I think they left us a legacy.
Yeah, your book has different chapters where you have initiative like meditations and thought-provoking activities. Is that the design of the book that you put together so that people kind of remember that period of Zepti, or is it more for anybody who wants to kind of get a sense of ancient Egypt?
Well, I think the book is a bit of both. It's a bit of both. So people can read the book if they wish to understand what is the mystery school of ancient Egypt. How did people view the spirit, the soul? What were the teachings? What they were working on? And hopefully they can maybe find parallels with their own understanding. And maybe it helps people who are on a spiritual path. So the book is a great book for the spiritual seeker. And sometimes people say, well, I'm following another spiritual tradition. I'm not sure about Egypt, or I'm doing things, in South America, or North America, whatever. But in the ancient world, we used to say that nobody really holds the whole picture. We all have a little part of the puzzle, and if we put them together, we can learn from each other. So it's not just the one thing. And the ancient Greeks were great on that. They had all these temples, all these different deities from Egypt too. And they said, all the enlightened beings have something to teach us. So whatever is the tradition, bring it here, and maybe we can expand our consciousness and have a bigger picture. So I think for anybody who is on a spiritual path, this is a great book to open, your third eye, and see, another part of the puzzle about spiritual awakening.
Yeah, I like that because you're kind of talking about a level of humanity that we don't pay attention to, which is our spirituality. And this period of Zep Tepi you're talking about was very, very pure. And if we can connect with it, it's probably going to be a detox, isn't it? And not only that, it's going to be an opening.
I think so. I think we will understand so much more about the evolution of our soul and the eternity of our spirit and what we're doing here on earth. You know, what is the current period we're going through and how we are coming out of that period and what is the next period we are growing into. So I think, you know, the ancient Egyptians, like other cultures, left us with their prophecies, with their myths that, you know, in face value you could say, oh well, they're fairy tales or nice stories, but when you go deeper, that's where the book takes you, is to offer you that other understanding, that other layer, as you are basically unveiling, lifting the veil of Isis unveiled, as they say in the esoteric world, lifting the veil and seeing a different picture.
We hear about the King's List in Sumeria that goes back 260,000 years. There's also a Egyptian King's List, but we don't really know how far it goes back because the Egyptologists stop at known pharaohs. They don't go into the distant past. What would you say, without, I mean, this might be difficult, but what would you say is a time period for Zep Tepi?
So, you know, a historical reference that we have is from Plato. So Plato talks about, you know, his fellow Athenian who lived before him, Solon. So in the classical Greece, and Solon goes to Egypt, and they talk to him about Atlantis, and they talk to him about this first time. So they say that it was at least 10,000 years before Solon's time. So that's 10,000 years before classical Greece. So that's you're there talking about 10,500 BC, you know, roughly speaking. But of course, it's, you know, further back, you know, that is just the one time. That is when, you know, the fall starts. But the you know, if you go further back, I would say, you know, easily you're talking about 15,000 BC, 15,000 to 13,500 BC is, you could say, the golden time in Egypt. It might be further, you know, much further, but that's the time that I remember in Egypt. Then when it comes to the 10,000, 9,600, that's where you have the fall. That's where things start to go wrong. But in Egypt, they still retain that. And I think when pharaonic Egypt starts at 5,000 BC, when the Egyptologists say, yeah, that's where, you know, pharaonic Egypt starts, what you have is that the unification of the two nations, Upper and Lower Egypt.
Right.
So Lower Egypt is where these people from Zep Tepi, from Atlantis and Zep Tepi, are keeping themselves to themselves until that time. They are stationed in the pyramids in Heliopolis or Unu, or Cairo. They are stationed there. Then they realize there are too few of us left. We are losing everything. We need to connect with the other people here. And then the North and the South come together. So for me, the unification of Egypt, that the Lower Egypt, which is the north of Egypt, are the Atlanteans, are the people from that came after the fall of Atlantis. The people who talk about Zep Tepi, who still remember, you know, the remnants of that. And then the indigenous population who was in the south, they come and form one nation, because there won't be enough of the you know, the Atlanteans left, and they have to somehow continue their tradition. So that is what I have seen, and I have seen the effort that these people have made to continue the spiritual tradition of the evolution of the soul, which is the exit point from the conditioned reality, through their temple work, what they have created there, and how important that was for them.
What do we see as the remnants of Atlantis when you go to Zep Tepi? Is Atlantis still around, or has it ended and you're looking at the refugees of Atlantis in Egypt?
So what I saw was that it was the Atlanteans who created the pyramids, who go and build the pyramids. So at some point, some of the Atlanteans, as they went to other places in the world, they go and build pyramids elsewhere as well. They have a master plan that they wish to connect as much of the earth that was available to them through etheric energy. And that's why they built all the sacred sites on places of power where the ley lines cross. And some of them go and live there. There is like an outpost, it's like a place where, they go and they are Atlanteans living in Egypt. Now, when Atlantis falls, what I have seen is that some of those Atlanteans who escaped the Great Flood, they come to the places where these outposts were. One of these places is Egypt. And they try to, come together and continue as much as possible their life there. But of course, they don't have access anymore to the superpower of Atlantis that was the big machine of etheric energy. They don't have as much access to that. It's just like the vibration, becomes lower and lower. They can't regenerate their bodies. They can't do other things that they were able to do, but still they have some sort of limited access. But is like, as we're coming closer to our time, all of that is becoming less and less. And eventually they realize the only way to keep it safe is to go through the temple tradition, because if they give that technology again to people, then that might, to everybody, that might be misused. So
And yet
they,
there's so many examples of high technology in Egypt. Every place I go, from the
yes,
stone cutting to the perfection in pyramid design to sculptures that are so perfect they could not have been cut by human hands. These big sculptures of Ramses II, which he claimed, but they were probably thousands of years before he even existed, and he decided to put his cartouche on there. It's a really fascinating idea that I see whenever I go to Egypt. But can you talk about some examples of the high technology that was in place during Zep Tepi?
so one of the examples is, you mentioned the statues, but one of the examples that I remember seeing at my first visit, my first visit to Egypt, is that unfinished sarcophagus, that where you have this sarcophagus that somebody started cutting, and it's almost as if they cut the rock just once, because if they had, they cut it at the wrong angle, so you can see that, oh, it's not cut straight. But if they were like just using the copper tools bit by bit, they would have discovered, I'm not going on a straight line,
Yeah.
so much earlier on. But this is something that's been cut once, and is that somebody made a mistake, and
You're
it's
talking
not.
about the sarcophagus at the museum.
Yes, at the museum. That's
Yeah, that's
one.
a famous example of a
Yeah,
big blade saw cutting. Yeah.
yeah. And so when I saw that, I asked, how was this cut? And I saw lasers. I saw
Lasers, really?
lasers cutting
Wow.
sarcophagus, lasers
God.
cutting this. And I just saw this, the laser, the fire of the laser coming down and cutting this. And I thought, we have no idea, what these people were doing. It's exceptional, but we have the blinkers on, and we can't accept it. Like, if things like that, this sarcophagus in the museum is the perfect example. All these other things that you mentioned, the drill holes, how can you have drill holes, so perfect with copper tools? It's impossible,
Yeah.
drill holes in granite. And there are so many examples, but what I saw was they were using a laser technology, and it's that was the only way that I could describe it. But in Zep Tepi, it wasn't just a technology. That was one thing. At that pure time, it was also our consciousness, the evolution of our consciousness was matching that technology, that we had such an incredible connection. We didn't need to use even language. The language was so sacred because it was so powerful. The words were so powerful because we were such powerful beings, but we were powerful beings not in the sense of our everyday world, power over somebody else. We were like so much in our energy, and we had this psychic communication that we now think, well, that is so exciting. It was actually then commonplace. We could speak mind to mind, and it
Oh, you're
was a
talking
very
about we were talking through telepathy.
telepathy. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so this is Zep Tepi that didn't really have spoken language.
They did, but it was like to speak. It was like to speak was to create.
Oh, wow.
So what you said, it was almost like it was not chit chat. Like I speak and I create. It was like a magical language. So that's what I saw. I also saw, Cliff, that the people that they had that such awareness that they knew where they came from in the cosmos, and they I saw that they were able to send back almost like through this telepathy that the place I came from, this is what it's like to live on Earth.
Okay. So they had
And
it in I mean, I follow the past life theory a little bit, but the older I get, the more I understand that we all don't necessarily keep incarnating from Earth. We are coming from other planetary systems, constellations, and embodying earthling bodies with all this ancient past of other civilizations and things like that. And so that's what you're talking about is people remembering where they came from, right?
yeah, yes, and seeing the internal journey of their soul. What is past, what is future. I'm here now, right, in this body, in this existence, having an experience of this life on Earth. What is this like? What we're creating here, but also being very present to this lifetime. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is that at the time of Zep Tepi, there were incredible spiritual teachers, spiritual beings, very highly evolved beings. And of course, you could say everybody was on a spiritual path or very highly evolved. But
Yeah.
these beings, did not they had such an incredible consciousness. They didn't go through the portal of death. They didn't die the way we died and leave our bodies, but they were able to transform their body into light. And because the consciousness is the only thing that exists, is like this body. Okay, we are here for so long, but it's the consciousness that is eternal. So they could go back into being their consciousness without, or their multidimensional self, without having to die. They could transform the body into light. So I saw that as well. And these incredible beings, unfortunately, are not on the earth anymore, but yeah, they have left us. So we have to now help ourselves and come together and wake up. But what they said is that, what we are doing is you can all do. We are just demonstrating that this is possible for you.
Right. Are there still parts of Egypt in these temples or perhaps sacred locations like the Assyrian that are used for initiative practice to kickstart the higher levels of consciousness that they once possessed there in ancient Egypt?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think so. So it's not talked about, and it's not something that is advertised or in any way. But I have come across very beautiful people, Egyptian people, who continue to do this work in their land, and they are guardians of this temple, of these temples. So they are very aware, and they know where the power points are, and they do healing work. I had experiences of that, but because it's all sort of not allowed in theory, although everybody knows it happens,
Yeah,
it's like something that I have to respect and not speak much about this kind of thing. But it is, the tradition is being continued by the very people who live there. So that is a wonderful thing. Yeah. And they are very powerful. Some of them are very, very powerful. I had an experience in the temple of Ramses III in the west bank of Luxor a few years ago, again with my group, and the person who came from the an Egyptian guy, who never saw him again, but he was there, he met us there, he knew exactly how many of us were there, even though some people had not come yet inside the temple. He said he was told that there would be so many people here.
Huh.
And the place we went inside the temple was not of the vibration of this earth. And as I went in, I thought, oh my goodness, this vibration is completely different to anything we know on the earth. And I've been there after many times, and it's not been there. So he was a catalyst. He had the key to activate that place for us. So
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of those temples have to be activated. You can't just go in and hope you get some energy. But I've always thought, and maybe I'd like to get your opinion on this, is that when you go to a sacred archaeological park that does have pyramids or temples that are unique, that if you intentionally ask for the energy to touch you, sometimes it'll work, won't it? I think it
yes.
does. It does in Maya land. I think I've tried it at Hathor, and it seems to work there as well.
Yeah, well, Hathor is the temple of Hathor is the temple of the Great Mother, and this is a mother to all of us. So her door is always open.
Right.
So if we go there with an open heart and say, like you said, may I be touched by the energy, and may I receive whatever I need to receive right now,
Yeah.
then she will be there, because here, see, this is the place where the door is always open. A mother never shuts the doors to her children. She wants us to come back to her, and so it's a wonderful place, and that's one of the most beautiful temples there.
How are we supposed to work with these ancient energies today in our complex society? If we can't, I mean, so many people can't afford to go to Egypt, but can we request the energy? Can we think back and maybe visualize working with the energy? How do we work with the energy?
Yeah, absolutely. The energies are available to us, universally, because there are, in the book, I talk about that a lot, and there's beautiful, beautiful practices there for people to connect. But briefly, just to say that the ancient Egyptians said there is the physical body, of course, it's not in Egypt, it's wherever we are. But there is another part of us called the double, that is the multidimensional self. That multidimensional self is made of energy. So this multidimensional self exists beyond space, beyond time. It can connect with the past, like I did in my past lives. It can connect with the future. It can connect with any place on earth, any sacred space. So the first thing is to ask permission, to say, I'm coming here. I wish to connect with the energy for the highest good, because this energy cannot be misused. It was when they tried to misuse the energy that Egypt started to fall, and it was, other foreign powers came and conquered Egypt and all of that. It creates chaos. So to avoid chaos in our lives, we need to be a little bit smart here. I'm talking from personal experience. Let us come to that place and say, okay, I ask permission for the highest good. May I receive a download of this energy. And we ask also that we can also ask that this energy have a healing effect on us,
Yeah.
or helps us to raise our vibration so we can continue our spiritual path and the evolutionary journey. We can also create a little ritual if we have more time, because ritual is a great way to connect. It bypasses the conditioned mind that has doubts as to do I feel or not. So rituals and ceremonies that I have included in the book that refer back to those times. Of course, in those times, it was days and days of ritual. Now we only have like,
An
10, 20
hour.
minutes, an hour, whatever we have. So
Yeah.
they're designed for our life now, and but they have a great effect. And I've practiced these teachings for a long time. Since 2006, I've been practicing and teaching this path, because Isis told me, she gave me, the first bit of this teaching, and she said, go and teach it now. I was so scared, but people found me in their dreams, and I wasn't advertising or saying anything then, but people were coming to my door saying, I was told to come and find you. And after 3 people did that, I thought, I better do it. I said, yes, I better do it. But since then,
Kind of
you have
funny,
no
but
choice, no choice, no choice.
yeah,
Uh,
you
and
incarnated for a reason. You're here physically for a reason.
I didn't know the reason before, but once I said yes to ISIS, it's now obvious. But I have folders and folders and folders of all these teachings. It's very rich, a very profound teaching, and I share it with people who wish to walk this spiritual path, and they find it helpful. So it's the path of the ancient initiate that is given me for our times now.
The book's called Sacred Mysticism of Egypt. My guest today has been Fortuna Adrimi. And I want to mention in the book, there is a lot of her own personal discovery, but she's got lessons and initiatory types of practices. Can you give us a couple of case studies of perhaps students who have worked with your material and who have had either their own visions or miraculous healings or whatever? I just love to hear a couple of case studies that you can remember about working with you.
So, and very easy way to connect with the material and to feel the energy is on Wednesdays. My other business partner in the IC School of Holistic Health and we do a free transmission of the energy. So people send us an email saying, I want to take part in the transmission. They make themselves comfortable. They can meditate. They can lie down. They can fall asleep, whatever they wish, and they receive the energy. And we don't know many of these people. We never heard of them. They just email us, and so we never know who is taking part, and
Yeah.
some people we do, but a lot of people we don't. And we get emails from people that are really touching. They're really touching our hearts. I'm not saying that happens to everybody because illness is also a journey, but we had an email from somebody who was terminal, and she basically had done all the medical interventions. There was just like nothing left, and somebody told her about the transmission, and she just said, the person said, oh, you might just help you relax. It's just bathing in the light. And this person kept taking part in these transmissions. And then she sent us an email. She said, my condition is now, I'm told, is in remission. I am fully well again. And I have done nothing else that I can put my finger on that said, this, medication helped or this, because she was told there's nothing more can be done.
Yeah.
So when something like that happens, it really touches my heart. And I thought, this is somebody, I have no idea who that person is. And she then stopped taking part because that was her. And I have no idea who
Yeah.
they are. And there are this is just somebody I don't even know, but there are also people who have been working with us for years. And these people who came because, again, something brought them. I remember one person saying that they had gone into a spiritual training. I think they were learning another energy system, and they kept hearing the word Iset, Iset, but they didn't know what that meant. And then they, at the time, was our course is the spiritual path of Isis. For some reason, they said maybe I will do this course. And then when I shared in the course that the ancient Egyptian name of Isis is Iset,
Yeah.
they were saying, no way, no way. I know I'm in the right place because this is what I was hearing those times. And when you hear that, you think, oh my goodness, the extent that these spirit guides, that these divine beings go to actually bring us together. But our mind can stop us so many times. But the extent, the work that goes behind the scenes for us to come together. And I see the people who are practicing the teachings, how they change. It's like people come with all sorts of problems or issues, or they don't know they have issues because there's a catharsis happening. So
Yeah.
everything's being revealed. The ego comes up. It's not always beautiful. There are some things that are quite hurtful, etc. But we get so many, emails from people saying, look, I never spoke about that. I was able to speak it to the class because something really made me feel so safe, made me feel at home. And how these people change their lives, that there's nothing stopping them then. It's like, after years, they have this belief, this trust in life. Before they felt, I don't know what I'm doing here in this world. I don't feel I should be on the earth. It was a mistake that I was born here. And after practicing the teachings, and the energy and the power comes and activates this soul essence that is waiting to live, waiting to be here, waiting to embrace life. Then there is a gradual, step by step, evolution. And I see that, and it really touches my heart to see people really evolve and come into that
Do
higher
you
state.
do you have soul activations in your book, Tula? I mean, I haven't read all the way through, but that's a pretty big deal. If you do a meditation where someone reaches in and actually, and I mean, some people might live their whole life and go, I don't know what my purpose is, but you hope at some point they figure it out. But do you actually have that in your book, or is that more of the mystery school that you are
you
co-owner of?
know it just depends where everybody is. Somebody read one of the place in the book, the passages I talked about the Ka and meeting your multidimensional self and meeting your Ka, and somebody wrote to me and said exactly that I had this soul activation. It was, my whole body was buzzing. I was just, she gave me all this,
Yeah,
email, how excited this person was that finally she understood herself, who she is. But that was somebody who had done a lot of work. Somebody could read that same thing and might not get there. So the practices meet us where we are, and I have no idea what they will give to each person. So these practices are really a step by step in our journey, but depends where we are in our journey.
yeah,
But they are very deep. So I think they go very, very deeply. If people do them, that's the hard thing, is to do spiritual practice. Everything stops us from doing that. We never have time for it. But if people actually do them, I think they will gain a great benefit. And I say that as somebody who also has, I have to kind of make that decision that I'm going to meditate. It's a bit of a struggle for me too, after all these years meditating. Yeah, even after Zep Tepi, there is that conditioning says, oh no, you have other things to do. But I know I have to do my meditation. And it's always at the end of the day that I know I have to meditate before I go to bed, because that day is over, sort of. I know we're all human. We're all in this journey. There's never any judgment. But
yeah.
my friend Fee, who is the partner of the IC School of Holistic Health, she has been meditating for over 35 years, and she is just incredible because she loves to meditate. She cannot, she wakes up and the first thing is that, like, I have to meditate. If we have a busy day, she will wake up in the middle of the night to make sure she meditates. Highlight of her life. And I think that's so rare. That's so rare. But I'm not like that. I need to push myself to meditate. But when I do, oh my goodness, because the energy is so deep, is so profound, is so
Yeah.
powerful. It
Yeah.
really is amazing. It's
I
amazing.
agree. Yeah, I've been meditating about 25 years. So the book just came out August 1st, so you can get it in Amazon. Where else can people learn about you? Give us your website, and if you're on social media, give us that material as well.
So yes, the website has so much, the IC School of Holistic Health.com. So you'll find webinars that we do once a month for introduction to the ancient Egyptian mysteries. You will find our program there for the initiations, and for also the path of the initiate, which is a lot more involved. And there is also the shamanic side. There's all sorts of retreats that we do. It's very, very rich. And there's a newsletter that goes out every month with the channelings from me through Goddess Isis. She comes through and she gives me all these words that I share about our times now, and all the things that we do also are in the newsletter. And yeah, I'm on Facebook. There's a group, Spiritual Awakening, that is there. If people want to join the group. And my name, if you put Fatoula Adrimi, I'm there, or Fatoula Adrimi Shamanism in Instagram, and podcast. Yeah, not podcast. What do you call it? Substack.
Oh, you're doing
Uh,
Substack writing.
yeah.
Okay.
So I write also in Substack, and I share things in Substack.
How
So
many times a year do you go to Egypt, or is it like once every other year? Because that's, I mean, from Scotland, it shouldn't take more than like 5 hours to get there.
yeah, I think it's about 5 6 hours, 6 hours from
That's not
London.
too bad.
No, no, it's nothing compared to the States.
Oh, it's
So the way I go to Egypt is I don't go every year or every other year. I go whenever I'm invited by Goddess Isis. She comes and says, you like she gives me this dream, and she says now is the time to go to Egypt. So I haven't had this dream for a while, and
uh-huh.
I would love to go. I would go, tomorrow if the dream came. But I have a feeling it might be 2027, the next one, but I haven't had the dream yet. So
I haven't had a dream yet. When you're called to go to Egypt, do you get kind of an idea where you're supposed to visit, like an itinerary? Like you got to go here and here and here?
everything.
Wow.
The dream is very detailed, everything.
Yeah.
She says you have to go, you have to start from this side. So the last time we started from Luxor, before we had the previous pilgrimage, we started from the pyramids. This time we started from Luxor, we went down to Aswan, then went up to the Dendera, stayed in Abydos for 2 nights, and then we went to Cairo then. So it might be the similar or very different. Other times he took us to Abu Simbel. We had to go to Abu Simbel and stay there as well, which was quite different too, because in Abu Simbel, of course, the temple is not in its proper place, but the
Yeah.
energy is still there. It's still there.
Yeah. I have a feeling that the Simbel was not built by the pharaohs. I think it's much earlier, the earlier period, perhaps Zep Tepi or even earlier, just because they don't have the skill level to create at that size. And it's funny because we know now that a lot of these pharaohs took these amazing sculptures and temples and even the pyramids and claimed them for themselves. They had massive egos, but even though the Egyptologists know this, they still kind of go along and go, well, that's Ramses II. He did that. Anyhow, hey, a real pleasure having you on the program, Fatoula, and thank you very much. And hopefully we'll have you again.
Thank you so much, Cliff. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a real pleasure, absolute pleasure to speak to you and share with everybody what is in my heart and in the book. The book is very good. I just a transmission of light. And thank you so much. And I would love to come back anytime. Thank you. Thank you.